my article next. So, Einride brings its electric, digital, and autonomous shipping solutions to Germany. So, they're going to be setting up facilities in Germany. I think this is interesting because, we were talking in the United States about what Elon Musk was trying to do with Tesla in terms of automated trucking and the considerations of what that will mean for jobs. And the truth of that was actually that there's such a trucker shortage that it won't mean much for years to come. But it's interesting to see Europe taking a stab at this. And the CEO decided to choose Germany because he said it was the seat of shipping. So now that we're on land talking about automated systems, the reason I wanted to bring this up because we've got great guests to talk about it, and I just want to see what are the regulatory and legal concerns, especially in a more complicated environment like the European Union versus the United States, where it's assumed you could ship from New York to Los Angeles and it's all going to be under the same federal law. What's everybody's thoughts on this?
Hey, Mike, can I go first? Because I want to fill in some blanks here. I did,
Sure.
because I'm a nerd, I did a little extra research on this. So Einride is a Swedish company,
Yes.
and they've been in existence since 2016 and actually had some of these autonomous trucks, the first ever, on the road in Sweden. As you said, this article is about their expansion to Germany. But what it mentions in passing, and I dug a little bit deeper into, is they actually have driverless electric trucks operating on public roads in Texas. And they actually have a headquarters. They have a location in Austin, Texas. And oh, fun fact, next week in Move America event, they're speaking. So I can't wait to meet these guys in person. Um, so they announced this year in March at Southwest, SWSX, that
South
big
by
event that's
Southwest.
every.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. They announced that they had their first remote pod operator. Her name is Tiffany Heathcott. I love that for a whole host of reasons. Number one, she's a woman and she's their first. And number two, to Anna's point, they're not calling her a master or a driver or any of the normal terms that you would think of in the industry. They're literally calling her a remote pod operator. And the vision is that they're going to eventually have one to many, right? Like a person like Tiffany in a control center operating multiple autonomous trucks at one time on the roads. And oh, by the way, other fun fact, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA, which in the United States are the ones to give approvals, gave approval for Einride to do this in Texas. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there that they've already been in Sweden doing this. They're in Germany now, like expanding through Europe. And oh, by the way, fun fact, they're driving around Texas. And to Sean's point, this thing is, if you look at this pod truck, number one, it's ginormous. Number two, it has no,
Technical term, ginormous.
yeah, there's no place at all for a driver in it. There's no cab for a driver, period.
Yep. Not even as a safety backstop.
Nope. So I would love to hear either Anna or Sean's thoughts on this. It's so cool.
Well, since I'm in the great state of Texas, I will say yes, we definitely have a lot going on in autonomous. They've been moving for a while. I think one of the first ones delivered some beer from one part of the state to the other. So I thought that was kind of fun. But yeah, the one thing we've seen about this that I thought was very interesting is that the use cases have grown very quickly. Not just on public highways, but particularly in areas that can be controlled, like mining, ports, etc. Their adoption rate is scaling quickly, or within a plant or area that's covered, that you're not dealing with public traffic.
Yeah,
So I think it's
more controlled
interesting to
conditions,
see
yeah.
those controlled conditions. You're starting to see a lot of adoption, plus all the tests. I mean, there's now hundreds of thousands of miles on the public highways that they're starting to run. So to me, it seems like this is moving as fast as any of the autonomous seem to be occurring. And I'm curious to see it seems to be that automated trucking would happen faster than perhaps some of the automated transportation of humans. As far as taking people from point
Less
A to point
liability,
B.
right?
Yeah, it just seems like, and the economics are once again
Yeah,
so much
bigger payout.
faster that
Yeah,
yeah. So I agree with your earlier point, Michael, that the dearth of truck drivers is giving an opening to this. But I do wonder, and I wonder this a lot as we look at robotics across the spectrum. In some cases, they're certainly replacing, dull, dirty, dangerous, and truck driving certainly might fill a couple of those areas. But there are an awful lot of truck drivers, and just looking at the United States, I don't know about the European Union where this story's based, but there's an awful lot of truck drivers. So depending on the speed of adoption, it'll be curious to see if the retirements and the lack of the younger generation entering the market equals out in any way to the adoption rate, to where there's not hundreds of thousands of people, because it's one of the ways people who don't necessarily have a higher education are able to
right.
make pretty decent pay.
Yeah,
And those
more
middle
than
American
decent. Hard
jobs
work,
are,
but yeah,
yeah, disappearing. And
yeah.
so I am kind of curious, because this one affects an awful lot of the workforce.
Hey, Sean, I was just going to say, as I think about this and my little drive through Texas and Buc-ee's, right? The classic Buc-ee's. What happens to all those truck stops? When the truck doesn't need stop and there's no people on it. So I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know what the future of Buc-ee's will be when this thing really kicks off. But anyway, great jerky there.
Well,
And
it's like all the empty retail storefronts that I see popping up.
yeah,
Post
yeah,
post pandemic. The truth of the matter is, you know, upcoming generations were going to adopt this technology and not take on that work at whatever rate they were going to do it at, but the need or the transfer of interest to these technologies happened rapidly under COVID. So it might even be that the study that I was quoting from 2 years ago about the trucker shortage is actually almost irrelevant based on the speed of adoption in kind of these controlled condition situations, because those weren't appraised in that report. This was literally talking for long distance shipping or truck driving. But we brought this up, and I try to push it on every podcast, because I think, since I work in the autonomous industry just as an advocate, that we don't talk enough about the reality that these are going to take away jobs. They're not going to be replaceable jobs for that generation. You might be able to train up new people to program robots or do maintenance for robots, but those will be new people. Those will not be people transferring their skills. So the thing for me is, we need to redefine work, value in your life based on how much you work. All of that is going to have to be considered, because the truth of the matter is, this dull, dirty, dangerous work should be absorbed by robots if we are going to create an environment for human flourishing. But that should not come at the consequence of people not being able to define success against each other in life for the work that they put into building themselves and creating value for the world. So,
man,
yeah.
many deep thoughts there, Mike. Blowing my mind. I would love to hear Anna's thoughts on that too.
Yeah, it seems that Germany is becoming a bit of a hub for autonomous driving or cars, because just recently Elon Musk, they opened a Tesla plant in Germany, and now I read this article, and it seems that German legislation is kind of advanced, because there's some similarities between law of the sea and traffic law, because in law of the sea you have the master, who is the responsible person, who is in charge. And when it comes to traffic law and also criminal law in relation to traffic offenses, you always have the driver, which is at the center of regulation. And here the same, you don't have a driver any longer. And in many European states, there are now at least projects to bring the law in line with this autonomous cars. And in many jurisdictions you also have trials, and in Switzerland, for instance, there are driverless buses within cities kind of shuttle buses and uh, quite successful trials. But I guess the traffic, like car traffic, is somehow comparable with maybe ports because you have congested areas and complex situations. It's not comparable to the open seas where you have not a lot of ships and where you don't have some of the problems you would have in ports or, you know, in traffic in cities, in urban area. Yeah, and then of course, I guess Europe is small and the countries, European countries are very small. If I take Switzerland, it's not even the size of Massachusetts, and each country has its own traffic laws, and the EU has some competencies, but not all. So it's also a huge, it's a very complex regulatory situation, and I'm not sure whether all countries are as advanced as Germany when it comes to regulation.
And they might not be as excited about it if it means, a dent in their workforce and then therefore damaging to their economy. So that should be an interesting negotiation between European states. So we got a couple comments we got to catch up on. So Mason Jar M, maybe autonomous defense UAVs, drones protecting drones. He was talking specifically when we were in the maritime sector. Yep, that's going to be a thing. And Joel Mario Garza, the need is so that a large shipping company control the market and keep smaller companies from getting hold of this business. The need for regulation is to keep businesses from access to this business. So I think he's saying that the regulators are going to favor already established companies. Might be true, might be not. It depends, especially in the United States. Actually, there's been some pushback around larger companies and purchases, even such that what would be a somewhat innocuous purchase, like Adobe purchasing Figma, there's discussion that the regulators might go after them for antitrust. So I don't know. We'll see. I would say that in terms of automated shipping and what Anna just said, I think there's a lot to discuss. It's not going away. And this seems like the sort of thing that can explode overnight, right? Where, especially with the amount of pressures we have to kind of get the economy up and running, and the supply side, demand side shocks have not seemed to completely resolve themselves, people will be looking for any solution to smooth and iron out those kind of bumps in the road, right?